Hi guys, this is Andy from Nismotech UK. This is the Raijintek Ereboss CPU cooler. Let's get started. Okay, so let's start with the actual box itself. We've got the Raijintek logo up at the top here, a nice image of the Ereboss CPU air cooler on the front. On this side you'll notice that we've got this massive screwdriver. I really like the idea of including a screwdriver. Obviously the cooler is going to be needed to be screwed down. The fact that they've included a long screwdriver for this is quite a nice plus point. It's really quite nice. So massive thumbs up to them for including that. You don't normally see that sort of attention to detail. On this side we've got a couple of specifications, key features. So we've got the nickel copper base, 6mm heat pipes, there's 6 of them, low noise outstanding airflow, obviously the slim type PWM fan, the multiple connections for the various different motherboards, etc. We'll cover all this in a moment. A couple more images including how the actual fans are installed using the rubber pins, obviously the copper nickel base at the bottom there. Some more specifications on this side, including things like the weight, thermal resistance, the heat pipes, information about the fan and the various different sockets that we'll come on to in a moment. And up at the top just a little bit of information about Raijintek, designed in Germany, etc. So let's now have a look at the box and we'll show you what's inside. Okay, so let's have a look inside and see what we get. I'm going to pull this up here. We've got the variety of different screws and obviously the fan connectors, the multiple mounting brackets and the back plate and some thermal grease. We'll have a look at that in a bit more detail. Just remove the cardboard a moment. We have the super slim fan, which looks really good. I really like the red framework on this. We've got a braided cable going to a 4-pin PWM connector. Looks to be quite a decent amount of length, and the fact that you can actually sort of wrap it around the fan, depending on where your connector is on the motherboard for that. Also it's not square, it's more of a rectangular shape. It is obviously a 140mm fan with 140mm sort of mountings by the looks of things, so that's really good. The instructions, obviously they're going to be in multiple different languages, but obviously you've got the various different stages of installation, which is really good. Make sure you have a good read of this if you are going to be purchasing this. So let's put it out of the box. Just going to close the box up a moment and stick it down there out of the way. Also we've got cardboard down here, so I'm just going to pull this off. This is a massive cooler. Really big inside. So that's the actual cooler itself. So let's have a little bit of a closer look at this. Okay, so this is the Ereboss heatsink itself. Now the dimensions for this are 140mm in width, 110.5mm in depth and 160mm in height. Looking at the top, we have got an embossed logo for Raijintek and the 6 copper heat pipes, obviously protruding from the top fin. I'm not quite sure as to how many fins there are on the actual heatsink. I will try and find out and stick it in the sort of text down at the bottom of the video. Obviously the material used is an aluminium alloy, solderless fan assembly, or fin assembly I should say. Looks really good. You've got quite a nice amount of gap between the actual fins, quite a nice design. Up at the top as well, just to point out, you have got this sort of air tunnel that goes all the way down to the actual bottom to obviously help with heat coming up through. And on this side obviously we've got these triangular again ventilations to obviously help with the heat coming from the bottom and dissipating through the top, and obviously out through where the actual fans are. So it's quite a nice design with the actual heat pipes. They are 6mm. There are 6 of them, and obviously, as you can see, they are copper. So the way that they sort of interleave in between each other is I assume designed to help, as well as to look really good, to be fair. Obviously, remove the sticker from the copper nickel base before installation. Make sure you do that, otherwise it will end up melting and you won't get the performance. And the holes here are for where you actually install the actual fan, which I'm going to do now. Okay, so the installation from the fan onto the actual heatsink is done using these little rubber mounts here. At the moment, the pins are in such a way that I'm pulling air from the actual heatsink out, obviously blowing it outwards. Obviously, if you're doing push-pull configuration, the ones on the other side, you would want blowing air through, so you need to put these in the other way around. So it's literally just a case of pushing these through the hole. And once they've gone through enough, you give them a quick pull there, like that. Obviously, the 2 at the top need to be pointing up, and the 2 at the bottom need to be pointing down. Now, I've already had a go at installing this onto the actual heatsink. Not the easiest of installation, I must admit, and to be honest, with the fins being so thin and flexible, you need to be very careful when actually installing them, to be absolutely honest with you. But the easiest way that I found is if you were to line this up doing the top of to start with, you literally just push these into the actual hole, like so. I'll try and bring this in a bit closer so you can see. But essentially, oh, here we go. You are just trying to feed them down through the hole and settling them into into place. Like I said, it is very, very fiddly indeed to actually install. But once they're in, the main idea of this is obviously you've got less vibration coming from the actual fan, which can only be a good thing. So again, obviously you're pushing these up through the actual holes. Once they're in place, they do actually stay there, which is quite good. So there you go, that's the actual fan installed. As you can see, it's not really going to go anywhere. It's quite strong with the actual installation. I'm pulling this quite hard, as you can see. So that's the actual fan installed. Moving on to the fan itself, it's 140mm in width, 150mm in height, and 13mm in thickness. So it's a really, really thin fan. The performance of this, the airflow, can go up to 56.55 CFM. The air pressure can go up to 1.24 mm H2O, and the life expectancy is 40 hours on the actual fan as well. Noise level coming from this is around about 28 dBA. So essentially it's a very, very high performing fan. So if you had 2 on this particular Ereboss CPU cooler, you're going to get a massive amount of air being moved away from the actual CPU, and the performance is going to be really good indeed. As I already mentioned, you've got a 4-pin PWM and a braided cable. So that's the actual fan installed. As you can see, in my opinion, it looks really good. It looks like it means business. So I'm really impressed with the overall design, and the fact that they are using a very thin fan on the front. Obviously helps with the noise level, the performance. It's a very high performing fan, and the overall look of the actual cooler is really good. So okay, so let's now have a look at the other accessories that come with the Ereboss CPU cooler. Okay, so in this bag we have got the backplate and the various crossbars and brackets, etc. So let's have a look at this. A bit of a tight fit. Okay, so plastic with the backplate. Obviously it's a universal backplate for Intel and AMD. We have got the crossbar that goes right across the top of the actual CPU cooler. So we've got the Raijintek, I should say, logo embossed into that. We have got the Intel brackets, and they're clearly marked Intel, which is again, quite a nice bit of attention to detail. And then we have the AMD, and of course they are marked as well. And we have a little pouch of thermal grease as well. So that's the brackets. Let's now move on to the screws. Have a little bit more of a look. Okay, so we have got, this is quite good actually. As you can see, you're running away from me. I've already got the rubber mounts installed and the fan installed to the actual cooler. So the fact that they do include 4 more to install an additional fan at the back if you want to put a different fan on, or a Raijintek fan, you've already got the rubber mounts, which is really good. Normally you don't see that, so big thumbs up to them for that one. We've got a couple of spacers here. We've got the various different connectors, etc., different screws. And obviously, yeah, so let's show you how to install it onto a motherboard. Okay, so as you can see, I've already made a start. Essentially, what we're doing here, this is one of the Intel configurations. You are installing a long screw up through the top here, keeping that in place. Use the plastic spacer and screw that all the way down. Just bear with me while I do that. Okay, so I am screwing this all the way down to the bottom of the base plate. Obviously you've got the motherboard that's going to be in here, so the gap, obviously there'll be a gap here, it will be a bit more closer up at the top. Once you've done that, you then get your Intel bracket, you put it on top like so, and screw these sort of nuts down on top like so. Again, obviously I am doing this very roughly just to sort of give you guys a rough demonstration. When we come to test the actual cooler itself, I will be giving you a much thorough installation guide. So that's it, essentially installed with the Intel brackets. Now this little fella here, you then use, obviously you put your thermal grease, you give it a good old clean. You then use this here to actually install on top, and it goes in this way. So what we're going to do, we're just going to quickly grab this and stick it on top. I'm going to put the cooler in, and let me just bring you down a little bit. Okay, so hopefully you can see this now. I'm just going to, if I can grab hold of the actual plate. There we go. Essentially it will be like so, and you'd actually get the screw down inside here using your Raijintek screwdriver and screw it down into place. So it's a little bit difficult, I must admit, to actually show you guys the rough installation, but essentially that's how it's going to look when it's actually installed. I think the best thing to do is, also when we come to test this, I'll show you how to install it a bit easier and a bit more properly, but essentially that's how you'd actually install it for an Intel configuration. Okay, so I've now got the Ereboss connected up to a power supply. Give it a switch on. It is connected through a 3-pin connector rather than just a 4-pin connector, so the fan is going to be going at full speed. As you can see with the white fan blades and the red outer design of the framework, it looks really good indeed. Just turn this around. Also we've got air blowing this way through the actual heatsink, so there's a massive amount of airflow coming from this. You can actually feel the air coming through the actual fins, which is really good. And also with it having an oversized fan, you can see right up at the top here, it is going to be chucking any heat that comes up through the actual heat pipes and onto the top fin. It will be pushing the heat away from that as well. So that's quite a nice feature, obviously, with the oversized fan. And again, down at the bottom, you've just got a massive amount of air flowing across the entire heatsink and from top of it as well, which I think is really nice. It's going to hopefully aid the actual performance of the actual cooler itself. So apart from that, it looks really good. Really like the design. Unfortunately, I can't show you the push-pull look of this, but I can imagine that's going to look absolutely fantastic. So okay, so on to my overall thoughts about the Raijintek Ereboss CPU cooler. The first thing that I want to point out, and really it's a big thumbs up to Raijintek, the fact that they've included a screwdriver, a nice size screwdriver to actually aid the installation of the CPU cooler, I think is fantastic. It's a real attention to detail, and something that, you know, potentially other manufacturers of CPU coolers probably should follow as well. So an excellent example there made by Raijintek. So on to my thoughts about the actual cooler itself. Obviously the heatsink means business. Just by looking at it you can tell that this thing should hopefully shift a hell of a lot of heat away from your CPU. The actual design I think looks really good, and very intriguing as well as to the way that they've got the fins set up, the various different holes to obviously help with getting rid of the heat from the CPU. The installation of the actual fan itself can be a little bit tricky, but once it's installed it stays in place. The rubber sort of pins that attach to the actual heatsink really do a really good job of getting rid of a lot of vibration from the actual fan itself. One thing that I do really like as well is the fact that they've used a super thin 140mm fan. It looks a lot better than having a real big thick 25mm fan on a CPU cooler like the majority of manufacturers out there. Even though it is a pain to install, it seems to shift a hell of a lot of air through the actual heatsink, or obviously to pull it out, like I said, depending on what orientation you decide to use this cooler in. So overall, extremely impressed with the actual cooler. Love the design. Love the build quality. We're going to obviously hook this up to our test bench and do some testing with the actual Ereboss. But until then, hope you liked the overview, and we'll see you in our next video. We hoped you liked our video review. If you did, then please leave a like, as well as any comments or questions you may have down below. Full details and specifications on this item can be found at our website, nismotech.com, along with all the links for purchasing if you wish. Also on our site you'll find our latest reviews and current giveaways, plus a lot more. We look forward to seeing you in our next review.